You think you know what hell feels like? Try watching your wife come home wearing a diamond necklace that another man gave her. My name is Ethan Hayes. Before 6 months ago, I was living what I thought was the American dream. A successful career as a corporate litigation attorney, a beautiful wife, a luxury condo overlooking San Francisco Bay. We had it all. Now I know better. The dream can turn into a nightmare with a single flash of ice against skin. It started on a Tuesday. I remember the fog rolling in thick over the bay, blurring the lights of the distant bridges into a watercolor smudge. I was pouring 2 glasses of Cabernet when Clara walked in, her usual grace slightly off kilter. "Look what Julian gave me today," she said, her voice a little too bright. She turned, and the light from the kitchen caught the cascade of diamonds nestled at the base of her throat. It wasn't just a necklace, it was a statement. A heavy, glittering declaration I couldn't decipher. Her smile seemed forced, her eyes not quite meeting mine. "For organizing that charity gala last month." Something cold settled in my stomach as I recognized the distinctive blue box she'd left on the counter. "Tiffany's, that's generous," I managed, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. "That's what, 20 grand? 30? For doing your job?" Clara's smile faltered. "Don't be like that, Ethan. Doctor Croft gives gifts to everyone on his team." "Really?" I countered, my voice sharper than I intended. "Janet from billing got one too?" I gestured toward the necklace. "Mind if I see it?" She hesitated for a fraction of a second, but it was long enough for me to notice. She unclasped it and handed it to me. The weight of it felt wrong in my palm, heavy with implications. I saw a tiny inscription on the clasp, his initials, JC, and my jaw tightened. This was too personal. "He's just old-fashioned," she said, snatching it back a little too quickly and tucking it away in her jewelry box, burying it beneath old costume pieces she never wore. That should have been my first real warning. You need to understand something about my wife. Clara Hayes wasn't just beautiful. She was brilliant. Stanford Medical School, top of her class. She could have been a surgeon herself, but after witnessing how hospital mismanagement affected patient care during her residency, she'd made the unexpected choice to pursue hospital administration. "I can save more lives fixing broken systems than operating on one patient at a time," she'd explained when we first met. She had worked her way up to become the executive assistant to Dr. Julian Croft, the chief of cardiothoracic surgery at San Francisco Memorial, and owner of the prestigious Croft Cardiac Care Centers. Croft was San Francisco medical royalty. His face smiled benevolently from billboards across the city. "Trust your heart to the best." At 52, he had the practiced charm of a politician, the steady hands of a surgeon, and the ruthless ambition of a man who had clawed his way to the top and intended to stay there. I'd met him twice. Both times he'd shaken my hand with calculated firmness, while his eyes assessed me like I was a competing predator in his territory. Both times I'd felt Clara tense beside me, her smile becoming plastic whenever he was near. A week after the necklace came the earrings, then a designer handbag, a spa day at the exclusive Nob Hill Club, a bottle of perfume that cost more than our monthly car payment. Each gift came with increasingly flimsy explanations. Each time, Clara's anxiety seemed to ratchet higher. "It's just how he shows appreciation," she insisted one night as she paced our bedroom, the latest gift, an antique silver compact, clutched in her hand. "He comes from old money. Giving expensive things it's just his way." "His way? Of what exactly?" I asked, watching her carefully. "Clara, talk to me. What's really going on?" "Nothing," she snapped, then immediately softened. "I'm sorry. It's just been stressful. The hospital board review is coming up. And Julian, Dr. Croft, he's been on edge." "On edge how?" She shrugged, suddenly fascinated by the pattern on our duvet. "Just demanding. A perfectionist. You know how surgeons can be." I crossed the room and gently took her hands in mine. Her fingers were cold, and I could feel a slight tremor running through them. I hadn't seen her this anxious since her board exams. That night, I woke at 3 a.m. to find Clara's side of the bed empty. I found her in our darkened kitchen, a tumbler of my whiskey, which she normally detested, gripped in both hands. She was staring out the window at the city lights, but I don't think she was seeing them. "Bad dream?" I asked, sliding onto the stool beside her. She flinched, then tried to cover it with a smile. "Just thinking." She took a long swallow of whiskey before answering. "Do you ever wonder if we're stuck? If this is all there is?" "What do you mean?" "This life, this city, these roles. She gestured vaguely toward the window, toward the hospital where she spent 12-hour days at Croft's beck and call. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning, and no one can see it. I covered her hand with mine. Clara, what's really going on with Croft? Her eyes filled with tears. Nothing, I swear, Ethan. He's just attentive. Attentive how? He notices things, compliments, small touches. Her voice dropped. The way he looks at me sometimes, like he's calculating something. Ice formed in my veins. Has he tried anything? Touched you inappropriately? God, no, she said too quickly. He's my boss, Ethan, and he's married to Eleanor Croft. She's on the board of every charity in San Francisco. That doesn't answer my question. Clara drained her glass. He hasn't tried anything I couldn't handle. I'm not some helpless intern, Ethan. I've dealt with handsy surgeons before. The casual way she said it, like workplace harassment, was just an occupational hazard to be endured, made something shift inside me. A cold, hard knot of anger. You shouldn't have to handle anything, I said, my voice low. If he's making you uncomfortable, drop it, she interrupted, standing up. Please, I've got everything under control. But the tremor in her hand as she set down the glass told a different story. As I lay in bed, feigning sleep, I knew my initial jealousy had been misplaced. This wasn't about infidelity, it was about fear, and I had promised to protect her, whatever it took. I just didn't know who the enemy truly was yet. The next morning, the fog had lifted, but a different kind had settled over our apartment, an unspoken tension that made the air thick and hard to breathe. Clara left for work with a brittle smile, and I was left with the echo of her fear. I couldn't sit still. My lawyer's mind, trained to dissect problems and find leverage points, kicked into high gear. I needed information. My first call was to Leo Vance, my old college roommate, now a resident at San Francisco Memorial. We traded the usual pleasantries before I got to the point. Leo, I need to ask you about someone's reputation at the hospital. Julian Croft. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Croft, Leo repeated, his voice cautious. Brilliant doctor. A complete god in the ore. Why? Clara works for him. Another pause, longer this time. Yeah, I know. Look, man, I don't want to stir anything up, but there are rumors. My knuckles went white around the phone. What kind of rumors? Nothing concrete. He's careful. But he has a type. Smart, attractive women in subordinate positions. There was this nurse practitioner last year, Sasha Petrova. She transferred suddenly to Portland. No notice, no goodbye party, and nothing definitive, but she filed a complaint with HR before she left. It was hushed up, but hospital gossip gets around. Sasha Petrova. The name lodged itself in my mind. After hanging up, I sat at my desk, staring at my computer screen. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I should trust Clara. But I couldn't shake the image of her at 3 a.m., drinking whiskey she hated, talking about drowning while no one noticed. My next call was to Maya Singh. She was a tenacious investigative journalist who'd helped me with a pharmaceutical case the previous year, a bulldog who loved nothing more than sinking her teeth into a powerful hypocrite. We met at a coffee shop in the Mission, far from Clara's hospital. The heart doctor? Maya raised an eyebrow when I told her who I was looking into. Why? He seems squeaky clean. Too clean, I said, and my gut says something's off. She studied me, her gaze sharp. This is personal, isn't it? I hesitated, then nodded. He's my wife's boss, and I think he's harassing her. Maya's expression hardened. Say no more, I'll see what I can dig up. While Maya worked her sources, I pursued another angle. Using contacts from a medical malpractice case I'd handled, I reached out to former patients of Croft's Pane. Most sang his praises, calling him a miracle worker. But 3 agreed to meet with me. The first was Laura King, a former surgical nurse who'd gone to Croft for what she thought was a minor heart valve issue. I knew something wasn't right, she told me in her modest Oakland apartment. At 42, she moved like someone 20 years older. The tests he ordered seemed excessive. But he's the expert, right? Who was I to question Dr. Miracle? Laura had ended up having 3 surgeries in 18 months. By the end, she had depleted her savings and been forced onto permanent disability. The worst part, she said, her hands shaking around her mug, I found out later from a colleague that my initial condition could have been managed with medication. I never needed surgery at all. The other 2 stories were eerily similar. A retired professor, Thomas Grayson, whose straightforward bypass had turned into a medical nightmare of chronic pain and crushing debt. A young woman, Sarah Williams, who had 5 surgeries for a simple pacemaker until her insurance company refused further coverage. After the insurance cut me off, suddenly there were no more complications, she told me, bitter understanding in her eyes. Funny how that worked out. By the time Clara started noticing my late nights and unusual phone calls, I had compiled enough concerning information to know I wasn't chasing shadows. There was a pattern to Croft's practice: unnecessary procedures, excessive billing, and a suspicious number of complications that required lucrative follow-up surgeries. But I needed more: hard evidence, financial records, internal communications. That's when I made my first mistake. I got sloppy. Despite knowing better, my concern for Clara had clouded my judgment. I'd been using my work laptop to compile research and accessed our secure server from home without using the firm's VPN, leaving digital footprints a first-year associate would know to avoid. Someone and I had a pretty good idea who noticed the unusual activity. The next day, my managing partner, Richard, called me into his office. His face was grave. "Ethan," he said, "we've received a concerning phone call from the legal team at San Francisco Memorial Hospital. They're alleging you've been making inappropriate inquiries about one of their surgeons." My mind raced. That's absurd. I'm researching a potential case. A case the firm hasn't approved? A case involving your wife's employer? Richard sighed, looking older than his years. They're threatening legal action, Ethan. Harassment, defamation, interference with business relations. Ugh. I was placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. As I cleared out my desk, my phone buzzed with a text from Clara. "We need to talk. Now." I found her pacing in our living room, her face pale with fury. "What the hell have you been doing, Ethan?" she demanded. "Julian called me into his office today. He showed me emails you've been sending to his former patients. He knows you've been digging into his practice." "Clara, I told you to leave it alone. Do you have any idea what position you've put me in? He thinks I put you up to this." "Did he threaten you?" I demanded. She laughed, a hysterical edge to it. "Of course not. He's too smart for that. He just mentioned how disappointed he was in my lack of loyalty, how he'd hate to see my career damaged by poor judgment. Oh, and he suggested I should get my house in order before any unfortunate incidents occurred." My blood boiled. That's textbook intimidation. It's my life, Ethan. My career. You had no right to go behind my back. She was right, of course. I should have been more careful. Should have protected her better. But backing down now would only make things worse. Our relationship, already strained, felt like it was about to snap. We stood on opposite sides of the room, separated by a chasm of my actions and her fear. The silence in the room was a living thing, heavy and suffocating. Clara's anger radiated off her in waves, but underneath it, I could see the tremor of fear she was trying so desperately to control. My first instinct was to defend myself, to justify my actions. But looking at her pale face, I knew that would only widen the chasm between us. "You're right," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I went behind your back. I was reckless. But I did it because I was terrified for you, Clara, and I was right to be." Instead of arguing further, I walked to my briefcase and pulled out the file I had been compiling. I didn't speak. I just laid it all out on our coffee table. Laura King's medical records, Thomas Grayson's billing statements, Sarah Williams's insurance correspondence, the patient testimonies, the billing patterns, the statistical anomalies in his complication rates. She stood frozen for a moment, then slowly, hesitantly, she sat down on the sofa. She picked up the first page. As a medical professional herself, Clara understood the implications even better than I did. I watched her face as she read, saw the anger towards me slowly morph into dawning horror, then into a cold, sickening realization. Her medical training allowed her to see the pattern, the deliberate, systematic exploitation hidden within the jargon and codes. "Jesus Christ," she whispered when she finally looked up, her face ashen. The file lay forgotten in her lap. "If this is true, he's not just harassing women. He's actively harming patients for profit." "Yes," I said softly, sitting beside her. "He is. And I've been helping him," she said, her voice hollow. "Scheduling these surgeries, coordinating with insurance. I'm complicit." "No," I said firmly, taking her hand. It was no longer trembling. It was still. "You didn't know, but now you do. And we can stop him." She took a deep, shuddering breath. In that moment, the fight between us evaporated. replaced by a shared enemy. The fear was still there, but now it had a target. She looked at me, her expression resolute, and I saw the brilliant, determined woman I'd fallen in love with resurface from beneath the layers of anxiety. "Okay," she said. "What do we do?" That night, our apartment transformed from a battleground into a war room. We formed a plan. Clara would continue working for Croft, keeping her head down while gathering whatever information she could access without raising suspicion. Her job gave her legitimate access to scheduling calendars, billing codes, and patient files, the very heart of Croft's fraudulent empire. Meanwhile, my time on administrative leave became a blessing in disguise. I would spend my days organizing the information, cross-referencing data, and building a case solid enough to take to the California Medical Board and potentially file a class action lawsuit. For the next month, we lived in a state of constant, humming tension. Clara would return from work, her face a mask of professional calm, and slip me USB drives hidden in her purse. We'd spend our evenings poring over spreadsheets and encrypted files, the glow of the laptop screens illuminating our tired faces. The work was grim, each new file a testament to Croft's depravity. But the shared mission brought us closer. We were a team again. At night, after we'd shut down the computers, we would make a point to talk about anything but Croft, deliberately rebuilding the small rituals of connection that had been lost. Then, one evening, she came home, and I knew instantly something was wrong. There was a faint, angry bruise blooming on her cheekbone, which she'd tried to cover with makeup. I was on my feet instantly. "What happened?" "Nothing. I tripped on the stairs at work," she said, her voice flat, her eyes avoiding mine. I gently tilted her chin up, my thumb brushing the edge of the bruise. "Did Croft do this to you?" She flinched at his name. "It wasn't like that. We were arguing about a scheduling conflict. He grabbed my arm. I pulled away and hit my face on the doorframe. "That's assault, Clara. We're going to the police." "No." Real panic flashed in her eyes. "Ethan, we can't. Not yet. If we go to the police now, it's just my word against his. We lose everything we've been working toward. He'd bury us in lawsuits." Damn it, she was right. Without solid evidence of his medical fraud, it would be just another he said, she said allegation that Croft's expensive lawyers would make disappear. "He knows something's up," Clara continued, sinking onto the couch. "He's been watching me, having his other assistant check in when I go to the bathroom. Today, he found me looking at patient files I shouldn't have had access to. I told him I was organizing his research for a presentation. I don't think he believed me. I knelt in front of her. "That's it. You're not going back there." "I have to," she insisted, her voice gaining strength. "We're so close, Ethan. The quarterly insurance reports come out next week. They're compiled on his personal server. If I can get copies, they'll show the pattern of escalating claims in black and white. That's the smoking gun we need. It's not worth your safety." "It is," she said, her eyes burning with a fierce light. "It is if it means stopping him from hurting more people. I'm not just doing this for us anymore. I'm doing it for Laura and Thomas and Sarah and God knows how many others." I knew that look. It was the same stubborn determination that had gotten her through medical school while working 2 jobs. I couldn't talk her out of it. "One week," I conceded reluctantly. "But you don't go alone. I'll drive you to work and pick you up every day, and you call me every 2 hours without fail. At the first sign of trouble, you leave immediately. Promise me." She nodded. "Promise." That night, as we lay in bed, she turned to me in the darkness. "When this is over," she whispered, "let's go somewhere. Just us. Remember that little inn in Mendocino we always talked about?" I held her tighter, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "We will." I should have known it wouldn't be that simple. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. Every 2 hours, my phone would chime with a simple text from Clara. All good, and I would exhale a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. But the silence in between was filled with 1,000 nightmare scenarios. On the 3rd day, the 6 p.m. text never came. By 7 p.m., I was calling her cell repeatedly, each call going straight to voicemail. By 8 p.m., I was in my car, breaking every speed limit on the way to Croft's Medical Center. This was no longer about a lawsuit. This was about getting my wife back. I used the key card Clara had given me to enter through a side door. The administrative wing was deserted, the silence amplifying the frantic beat of my heart. I was about to head for her office when I heard voices coming from Croft's suite at the end of the hall. One was his, smooth and menacing. The other was Clara's, and she sounded terrified. You really thought I wouldn't notice? Croft was saying. All those files you've been accessing? Did you think I'm stupid? Julian, please, I can explain. Oh, I'm sure you can. Just like your husband has been explaining to anyone who will listen that I'm some kind of fraud. I crept closer, positioning myself beside the partially open door. I risked a glance inside and saw Croft gripping Clara's wrist, twisting it until she winced in pain. You have no idea what intimidation is, he hissed. But you're about to find out. You and that crusading husband of yours. That was all I needed to hear. I pushed the door open. Take your hands off my wife. Croft's head snapped up, shock flickering across his face before it smoothed into that practiced, camera-ready smile. We exchanged threats, bluffs, and promises of mutual destruction. As we turned to leave, Croft called after us. You walk out that door and you're done in this town. I'll make sure neither of you works in San Francisco again. Emend. Clara paused, looking back at him with a mixture of pity and disgust. You know what the sad thing is, Julian? You actually are a brilliant surgeon. You could have helped so many people. Instead, you chose to hurt them for profit. His face contorted with rage. Get out. We left, but not before Clara managed to grab a single flash drive from her desk drawer, the one containing the quarterly insurance reports we'd been waiting for. The confrontation had been a victory, but a hollow one. We had the evidence, but we had also shown our hand. We hadn't counted on Croft's desperation or his reach. The next morning, as Clara was driving to meet me at our lawyer's office, a black SUV ran her off the road on the approach to the Golden Gate Bridge. Her car spun out, crashing into the guardrail. If the rail had given way, she would have plunged into the bay. By some miracle, she escaped with only a concussion and a sprained wrist. It was deliberate, she told me at the hospital, her voice shaking. He ran me off the road, then slowed down to look at me before driving away. She'd recognized the vanity plate. Heart Doc. The police were skeptical. An accident on the foggy bridge approach wasn't unusual. Dr. Croft was a respected member of the community. This changed everything. This was no longer about exposing a corrupt doctor. This was about our lives. I called Jax Ryder, a former client and security specialist who owed me a favor. For a significant fee, he agreed to provide immediate protection and help us set up a safe house outside the city. We grabbed essential documents, a few changes of clothes, and disappeared. From our secure location, a nondescript rental in a quiet suburb, I authorized Maya to publish everything. But we needed something more definitive, a knockout punch that would break through Croft's wall of respectability. The opportunity came from an unexpected source. While reviewing Clara's old work emails, we saw that Croft's annual charity gala at his Napa Valley estate was scheduled for the coming weekend. And the guest of honor was the state's insurance commissioner, a man with the power to launch investigations into healthcare fraud. That's how he operates, Clara said, pointing at the screen. Favors, gifts, thinly veiled bribes. An idea began to form in my mind. What if we could catch him in the act? Jax agreed to help. As a former Special Forces operator, he could pose as waitstaff and plant discreet recording devices. The plan was incredibly risky, but we were out of options. Croft's media team was already painting us as a disgruntled employee and a jealous husband. The night of the gala, I sat with Clara in a surveillance van, parked a half-mile from Croft's sprawling estate. We watched the feeds from Jax's micro cameras, our fingers interlaced. Despite the danger, there was something exhilarating about working together like this. A silent, perfectly synchronized team. As Clara had predicted, Croft led the commissioner to his private library for a private drink. The cameras captured everything. Croft's smooth transition from small talk to business, his carefully worded offer of a campaign contribution in exchange for the commissioner's help in reclassifying his procedures for better insurance coverage. When the commissioner resisted, Croft's mask slipped. He implied he had dirt on the commissioner's wife. It was more than I dared hope for. I was about to call Jax and tell him to pull out when something caught my eye on another monitor. It showed the main hallway. Croft had cornered a young waitress. His hand was on her arm, his face uncomfortably close, his expression predatory and all too familiar. I watched, seething, as the woman tried to pull away. Then, unexpectedly, the commissioner stepped into the frame. He deliberately inserted himself between Croft and the waitress, making a show of asking her for a drink. The waitress escaped, shooting the commissioner a grateful look. That could have been me, Clara said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. That was me, so many times. She shook her head. No more. We end this. Now. We had our evidence. We had our knockout punch. Now all we had to do was land it. The air in the van crackled with a mixture of triumph and adrenaline. We had him. We had Julian Croft on video attempting to bribe and threaten a state official. It was the kind of irrefutable evidence that even his army of lawyers couldn't spin. After Jax returned safely with the recording devices, we met with Maya and mapped out our strategy. The video would be most powerful if released alongside official action, a 1-2 punch that Croft couldn't deflect. The next morning, armed with the video and our meticulously compiled evidence, I had appointments with 3 different authorities: the State Medical Board, the District Attorney's Office, and the FBI's Healthcare Fraud Division. Maya would break the story online the moment the first official complaint was filed. What we hadn't counted on was the depth of Croft's connections, or his desperation. Somehow, through a leak in the DA's office, we later learned he got wind of our appointments. As I was leaving our safe house to meet with the medical board, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. There were no words, just a photo. It was a picture of Clara, sleeping peacefully in our bed, taken from outside through the window of our supposedly secure location. My blood ran cold. I immediately called Jax, who confirmed the perimeter hadn't been breached. The photo must have been taken hours earlier, which meant they'd found us and had been watching. The message was clear: back off, or she's next. I rushed back inside to find Clara already awake and on her phone, her face ashen. I showed her the threatening photo, and she held up her phone so I could see the screen. It was an email from Croft's attorney, a notice that she was being sued for breach of confidentiality, theft of proprietary information, and defamation. The damages sought would bankrupt us 10 times over. "He's trying to scare us," I said, with more confidence than I felt. "It's working," Clara admitted, her voice trembling. She looked from the photo to the lawsuit. "But I'm more afraid of what happens if we don't stop him." I sat beside her on the bed, taking her hands in mine. They were cold. "Whatever happens next, we're in this together. Just like we promised. For better or worse, remember?" Clara looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in what felt like months. Then she leaned forward and kissed me. It wasn't the distracted peck we'd grown accustomed to, but a real kiss, full of all the fear and resolve and love we hadn't been saying. "For better or worse," she echoed when we finally broke apart. "Let's make it better." We had a decision to make: retreat and hope Croft would be satisfied, or push forward into the storm. In the end, it wasn't really a choice at all. I called Maya. "Release everything. Now. All of it." "Are you sure?" she asked. "Once it's out." "We're sure," I said. "And add this." I sent her the threatening photo of Clara. "Make it clear this is the level of intimidation we're dealing with." Within hours, the story exploded. The video of Croft and the insurance commissioner was the lead story on every local news channel, played on a loop. His initial response was predictable: blanket denials, threats of lawsuits, claims of doctored video. His PR team worked overtime. But then something unexpected happened. Eleanor Croft, Julian's wife of 25 years and a respected hospital board member, filed for divorce. Her public statement was devastatingly simple and utterly damning. "The evidence presented is consistent with concerns I have had for some time. I will be cooperating fully with the authorities." Her defection sent shockwaves through San Francisco society. It was the first crack in the dam, and it lent immediate, unimpeachable credibility to our allegations. Then the floodgates opened. Other women began coming forward. A nurse who'd left the hospital 5 years earlier. A pharmaceutical rep who'd been banned from Croft's practice after rejecting his advances. Former colleagues spoke about his intimidation tactics. Junior surgeons described being pressured to perform procedures they felt were unwarranted. The dam had broken. After years of silence enforced by fear and institutional protection, people were finally speaking their truth. The final blow came 3 days later. The FBI raided both Croft's medical center and his Napa mansion, carting away boxes of documents and electronic devices. News helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting the downfall of a king to the entire world. 1 week after the story broke, Julian Croft was arrested and charged with multiple counts of healthcare fraud, attempted bribery, and witness intimidation. His medical license was suspended. The image of him being led away in handcuffs, his perfectly tailored suit rumpled, his expression shell-shocked, made the front pages nationwide. The medical saint had fallen, and his fall was spectacular. For Clara and me, the victory was bittersweet. We had won, but the ordeal had taken its toll. Clara's career in hospital administration was effectively over in San Francisco. No one would hire the whistleblower who had brought down one of the city's most prominent figures. My law firm, too, had made it clear that my vigilante approach wasn't welcome. They called it a violation of professional ethics. I called it saving my wife's life. We had lost our careers, we had lost our home, but we had each other, and we had our integrity. As we packed the last of our boxes, preparing to leave the city that had once been our dream, I looked at Clara. The fear that had haunted her eyes for so long was finally gone, replaced by a quiet strength I hadn't seen in years. We had faced a monster, and we had won. 6 months later, the San Francisco fog was a distant memory, replaced by the soft, gray mist of Seattle. We had a small apartment overlooking Puget Sound, the view different from our old one, but beautiful in its own way. The frantic energy of our old life had been replaced by a quiet rhythm. We took long walks, cooked dinner together, and talked. We really talked, for the first time in years. Our courage, it turned out, had not gone unnoticed. Clara had been headhunted by a Seattle hospital system looking to revamp its ethics and compliance department. They wanted a leader, they said, not just an administrator. I had joined a small, tenacious law firm that specialized in representing victims of healthcare fraud. Our scars had become our credentials. One rainy afternoon, I received a call from Jax, who had stayed in touch. "Thought you'd want to know," he said, his voice grim. Sasha Petrova surfaced. Sasha Petrova, the nurse practitioner Leo had mentioned, who had mysteriously transferred to Portland after filing a complaint against Croft, the first name in my investigation. "Where is she?" I asked. "That's just it," Jack said. "She didn't transfer. She disappeared completely off the grid. Her family reported her missing about a year ago, but the investigation stalled. No leads." He paused. "Until now, Portland PD found human remains in a wooded area outside the city. Dental records match Petrova. And my blood ran cold. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. Are they saying?" "They're not saying anything officially yet," Jax interrupted. "But they're looking hard at Croft. They've got cell tower data placing his phone near the site around the time she disappeared, and they found fibers in the remains that matched the carpet in his private plane." I sat down heavily, the implications washing over me. This was never just about money or power or ego. Croft wasn't just a predator, he was a murderer. The bruise on Clara's cheek, the car on the bridge, we had been dancing with a devil far more dangerous than we had ever imagined. When I told Clara, she went very quiet. She walked to the window and stared out at the gray water for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "It could have been me." I came up behind her and wrapped my arms around her. "But it wasn't," I said, my voice thick. "You're safe. He's never going to hurt anyone again." Oh. 2 days later, the news broke publicly. Julian Croft, already awaiting trial for fraud and corruption, was now the primary suspect in a homicide investigation. His bail was revoked, and he was transferred to a maximum security facility. The man who had once been untouchable was now facing the prospect of spending the rest of his life in prison. That night, we went out to dinner at our favorite local restaurant to mark 6 months in our new city. It felt less like a celebration and more like a final exhalation of a breath we'd been holding for over a year. Afterward, we walked along the waterfront, hand in hand. The lights of Seattle sparkled across the bay. "You know what I realized today?" Clara said, stopping to look out at the water. "For the first time since this all started, I didn't think about him once. Not all day." I smiled, wrapping my arm around her waist. "Good. That's how it should be. And 4. We have a real chance here, don't we?" she said, her voice soft. "To start over. To be us again." "We never stop being us," I said. "Even at the worst moments. It was always us. Just us against the world." She turned to face me, her eyes reflecting the city lights. "I'm sorry I shut you out at first," she whispered. "I was so scared. I thought I could handle it alone." "You never have to handle anything alone," I said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "That's the point of us." Clara stood on tiptoe to kiss me. There, on the waterfront of our new city, with our new life stretching before us, it felt like the first day of the rest of our lives. We had faced down a monster in a surgeon's coat and won. We had lost the life we thought we wanted, only to find the one we truly needed. Whatever came next, we would face it together, on this different, more peaceful shore.